I'd like to welcome our first speaker. It'll be Ren Hurst, and Ren is a former professional horse trainer and hoof care specialist. She is the president and founder of the New World Sanctuary Foundation and author of 2 books, Riding on the Power of Others, A Horsewoman's Path to Unconditional Love, and the upcoming Animal Lover, Restoring Connection to Wild Wisdom. She experienced a radical shift in perspective that exposed the true harm and exploitation running rampant in the equestrian world and in all forms of animal domestication. But she can tell you much more about that herself, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ren.
Thank you, Caitlin. Well, Caitlin took a lot of that out of the way. So I used to be a professional horse trainer. I'm born and raised from Texas, and in every way that you might associate that meaning. I spent the first 30 years of my life in Texas. I have stood on the slaughterhouse floor, watched the process from start to finish, and was never fazed by it because that was my conditioning, and that's the world that I grew up in. But in a moment with a stallion that I was trying a very esoteric method of relationship with, all of that changed in that suddenly I couldn't look at animals the same way or even anywhere close to the way I had before. And as a professional horse trainer, I wasn't from the more brutal or harsh tactics. I was considered a horse whisperer. But what I came to realize is all that means is that I had become a master manipulator and someone who was able to subtly and insidiously be able to get the results I wanted through small behaviors and ways of controlling others. And unfortunately, what this horse exposed for me is that that was leaking into my personal life as well and affecting me in all areas, not just how I treated animals. And what was shown to me, what basically shattered, is that we live in a paradigm where codependency is masquerading as love, as our understanding of relationship to one another, but especially to animals. And by relating to animals in a way that removes all forms of unnecessary control, and as their guardians, the only thing that we're really responsible for is their basic needs, not their emotional needs. Each one of us as individuals are really responsible for our own emotional needs. But in our domesticated environments with our pets, we're getting our emotional needs met through the pet a lot of times. And the work that I do now separates that so that we're becoming whole unto ourselves and allowing the animals to become whole unto themselves so that a healthy relationship can take place. And we now have a model of interacting and being in the world that looks like true unconditional love and not exploitation in any form. Even as vegans, a lot of times we're still using animals exploitatively in a way of getting our emotional needs met through the beings in our home. But those are the beings we have the most control over their lives. And so at the very root of how do we change our behavior and how do we show up in the world as conscious human beings, we've got to look at that which we do have the most control over, which are the dependents in our care and ourselves. So the way I relate to animals now allows that to take place so that there is a space of invitation and true consent is being honored with the beings that are around us at all times. But more than that, a lot of the times we don't even realize that a dependent in our care is not actually in a position to offer consent for the use of their body. So that's why no riding horses for me. I stopped the moment I realized that this being in my care can say yes to me all day long, but because I'm in a position of power over them, because I take care of their basic life needs, it no longer felt good. So what my work looks like now is a removal of all forms of unnecessary control so that true relationship can take place. And in that true relationship, connection is restored so deeply that you no longer want to exploit others or use them or consume them or wear them or do any of the things that lead us outside of a vegan lifestyle, because fundamentally I think that we honestly are that way to begin with. That's what love looks like, is honoring others. So if we're not practicing this in our homes, if we're not practicing what it is to honor another one truly, then our daily practice is going to be reflected in our external environment, and we're creating a reality around us that is exploitative in nature. So as vegans, a lot of times we get hung up on not eating animals and not wearing animals, but the exploitative relationship of codependency is still very rampant. And that's where I think we need to do a lot more work. And it's changed every area of my life. The book, Riding on the Power of Others, was basically my journey as a horse trainer and how I came to these conclusions. The new book that I'm writing and will be coming out hopefully in the next year will expose a new definition of love as this work has taught me, why it's important, why it's necessary, and how to do it in your own home in a very practical, basic way. So I've kind of been from the complete opposite side of the tracks. I now live in Southern Oregon and live a very different life. I founded New World Sanctuary Foundation with the hopes of creating a global network of spaces that would like to offer sanctuary to animals and humans alike as a experiential way to understand this method of relationship and this way of relating to others in an unconditional manner. And also to support people and animals, but people like me who, when a radical shift like this occurs, you're kind of left with not knowing what to do next. The last 4 to 5 years, it's been a real struggle of how do I turn this 6-figure horse training career that I left behind into a way to feed the 19 equines in my care still, to take responsibility for them, but now everything I've known in terms of how to make money is not available to me. So New World Sanctuary Foundation is set up for people like myself who were successful in their career of exploiting animals as a way for people to support the animals that are now going to live in sanctuary so that those individuals can make the shift to a life of service and take the time that's necessary to develop the skills to do something more valuable in the world than using animals. Other than that, I now offer coaching and consulting in interspecies relationship dynamics so that people can start to make moves in this direction. And I live a pretty quiet life with my animals all around me in a way that doesn't look anything like the way I used to use them or train them. And also, this relationship moves you completely beyond the need for training of any kind. I'm even speaking to positive reinforcement. It teaches you how to relate to animals in a way that is much more equal in terms of understanding and communication, but understanding and recognizing that we are still their guardians at the end of the day, not their friends necessarily. And it's very parallel to how conscious parenting would look. And what happens in that dynamic is, it's hard to describe with words. It's experiential in nature. It's ineffable in some ways, but the deep, profound sense of connection that it restores to all life is undeniable, and it never leaves you. And that's the benefit and value of this work, because too often many of us are still reaching for our dog or our cat to feel okay in the world, and that may be our only source of unconditional love. We're still reaching outside of ourselves. And the issues that I'm seeing on the planet are from this externalized sense of power and control rather than finding that from within. And as long as we're surrounding ourselves with domesticated animals and reaching externally for our sense of well-being, we're going to perpetuate that in our personal lives, our relationships with other humans, and in all life on the planet. So it starts at home, it starts inside. And the work I do now just provides a practical way of experiencing what it is to be in true unconditional relationship to another. Other than that, I mean, veganism for me was a result of unconditional love and practice with my animals. I didn't become vegan knowingly. I became vegetarian because I thought it would make me a better horse trainer, because that's crazy. But someone said sometime that that the horse could smell if I had been eating meat, and I was like, I don't know if that's true or not, but we'll just take it into consideration. So I gave up meat, and I'm not sure if it made me a better horse trainer or not, but this form of relationship made me no longer want to do any of that just from a natural inner state. So 5 years ago, I was a steak-consuming Texan with all the stereotypes associated with that, and this changed me so dramatically that there was no going back. So now I live a life of service to the animals and to perpetuating this work and teaching others. And there's just no way that I could have ever found the sense of well-being and peace that exists in my life today by using animals the way that I did. And unfortunately, most people with horses feel like their horses are their sense of joy in the world. You try to take a horse from a horseback rider or especially a professional horse person, that's their biggest fear, because that's where they derive their sense of power and control in the world, is externalized on the backs of these animals. And so to try to take that from them abruptly would be to take their coping mechanism with how do I survive. And so a lot of us need to remember that when we're talking to horse people especially, that that's a symptom of a problem that that person needs help. It's not necessarily that they're causing harm on purpose. No one has horses to intentionally cause them harm, and every horse person I've ever met loves their horse to the best of their ability. The problem is that we don't know what love is, and we don't know what it looks like in this world. And so we put it out there in the form of codependency rather than what it truly means to honor and respect another. So as vegans, to advocate for veganism, especially in the horseback riding community, to me, it's so important to understand that that person is lacking something and they need support, not to be told that they're wrong, not to be pointed out that they're harming the individual in their care that they love deeply and desperately at times. And the best way we can help one another is to model what it is to be at peace and come from that place rather than making one another wrong. As a horse trainer, if anyone would have come to me and told me I was doing something to harm my horse, that you wouldn't have gotten 5 minutes into conversation with me. I wouldn't have believed it. And in my experience, no one does, because that's their reality. And to try to contradict someone's reality is just an avenue for conflict. So what this work that I do with animals now is it removes all distractions of using the animal in any way, shape, or form, and it returns you to yourself constantly, and it returns them to themselves constantly, so that your source of power is now coming from within, and that you can stay rooted in that and stay grounded in that. And from that place, better decisions are made. Presence is more available, and we're able to understand more and have compassion for ourselves and others. And as long as we're practicing anything but that with the animals in our immediate care, it creates a lot of static from being able to know what's true and what isn't. And we get stuck in the right and wrong world where we're shaming and allowing guilt to rule our decisions, which isn't very long-lasting in my experience. So that's kind of where I come from. What's our time limit on this? I'm not really paying attention. So for me, veganism is a result of proper spirituality, not necessarily a spiritual path. Not that it can't be both, absolutely. But I think when we speak to veganism as a path, we have to include the exploitative dynamic of codependency in our relationship to domesticated beings in our care. So if we're not considering that, it doesn't take you as deeply as it can. If we're not eating animals and we're not wearing animals and we're not using animals, obviously, but we're still reaching for them to meet our emotional needs, it's not going to affect you and restore the connection as deeply as is available to us. And it's that place that changes everything. So that's really all I have to say on that subject.